Welcome, everyone, to another episode of PTR Perspective. In today's episode, we will be talking about the impact of decarbonization regulations on the European power transformers market. I know power transformer is a very important topic in today's energy transition world, with the very high demand and the shortages from the supply side. This episode dives into some of the drivers of that demand to see how sustainable we expect it to be. What are the underlying regulations which we believe are driving that demand forward, and how we think this will be evolving in the years to come. With me today, I have Azhar Fayyaz, who's our lead analyst on Transformers research. This guy spends all year long thinking about Transformers, researching about Transformers, and talking to Transformer industry experts around the world. It's my pleasure to have you with me, Azhar, for this episode.
Thank you so much, Hassan.
All right, let's jump directly into it. Let's start with that. What are the main decarbonization regulations that Europe has implemented uh, that impact the power transformers market? And what do you think is their impact on the grid side?
Okay, so uh, first of all, like if we talk about the Europe, then Europe has implemented several key decarbonization regulations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and transition to a sustainable energy system. Now, these regulations have had a significant impact on the electricity grid in general. If I talk about some of the main regulations and their effects on the power grid, then I would say the main regulation is the European Green Deal and Fit for 55 package. Now, European Green Deal is the generic roadmap to achieve the greenhouse gas emission targets, and Fit for 55 package is basically the detailed overview of the plan, which basically targets different segments according to which we can Europe can achieve its targets. So let's say if we talk about the renewables, then Fit for 55 package has a renewable regulations. Then it also has a regulation around the EV charging infrastructure. So European Green Deal is the broader you would say concept, and then Fit for 55 package targets each and every, you can say, scope, each and every uh, I would say each and every area where they can reduce the carbon footprint. Now, according to this European Green Deal, Europe plans to produce at least 55% less net greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 compared to 1990 levels. Also, Europe aims to achieve at least 32% renewable energy in the EU's total energy mix by 2030. Now, if we talk about one of the key components of decarbonization, then it's the increased adoption of renewable energy sources, which are essential for reducing
Mhm.
greenhouse gas emissions. The penetration of renewable energy sources has increased significantly in the recent years, with many European countries setting ambitious targets for their adoption. This is driven by a desire to basically move away from fossil fuels and towards a more sustainable energy future. Another key component of the decarbonization is the increased penetration of electric vehicles, which is leading to a growing network of charging infrastructure throughout the region. Now, in order to accommodate all these increasing renewable energy sources and EV charging infrastructure, grid expansion is necessary, and it is basically
Mhm.
forcing utilities to expand and modernize their power grid so that both renewable energy power plants and the EV charging infrastructure can connect with the grid.
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing to highlight, like the connection between, yes, you need more renewables, you have more EV charging infrastructure, but why is that impacting the power transformers market, right? That essentially means new substations need to be installed to evacuate that power. New substation needs to be installed to kind of transmit that power yeah, across the country, right? But then also when you
Yeah.
think about EV chargers, even though they're being installed on the distribution level, although in some cases on transmission levels as well, like that translates into more demand as well, right? And that means more substations and directly the demand for transformers. Um,
Yeah.
Important correlations, understood. Let's talk more quantitatively. Can you kind of get into a bit more detail on what are the renewable energy targets of Europe, quantitatively speaking, and then maybe also highlight some of the specific countries or key countries where you see the power transformer demand evolving? What are their renewable energy targets and how are they impacting the power transformers demand?
Okay. So as like we have established that modernization of the power grid is crucial to enable the integration of renewable energy sources and to ensure the stability and reliability of the grid. Now, if we look at the historical figures for renewable energy in the last 5 years and what is expected for the next 5 years in the region. So if you talk about the total renewable capacity additions in Europe in the last 5 years, then about 272 gigawatts were added in the last 5 years. However, in the next 5 years, a capacity of about 450 gigawatts is expected to be added. And this is going to be 65% increase in the capacity addition compared to the last 5 years. Now, if we break the capacity addition further down, then solar PV accounts for over 70% of the expansion and wind accounts for another 26%. So basically, these are the two which account for more than 96% of the renewable additions. Now, if we look at the utility scale solar capacity, we see that there is a huge movement there with the capacity additions in the forecast years from 2024 to 2028. And this capacity addition is expected to be 94% higher than the case in the last 5 years. If we just talk
Mhm.
about the utility scale solar addition. Similarly, if we talk about the wind capacity, then again in the next 5 years, the capacity additions will be about 42% higher than from the historical period. Now, do even though like we see 42% capacity increase in the wind energy in general, but if we talk about the offshore wind to be specific, then the forecast for offshore wind has been slow because of persistently longer lead times and concerns over future projects economic attractiveness. So it mostly is the onshore wind projects which are driving the forecast of
Interesting.
wind energy.
Yeah.
Now, if we talk about this movement within the Europe, then definitely it is going to drive up the demand again for legacy grid equipment, including power transformers, as utilities will look to expand and modernize their power grid to incorporate this additional capacity coming from the renewable energy sources. For example, if we talk about the Spain, then Spain's ambitious 2030 goals of achieving 62 gigawatts wind, 76 gigawatts solar, and 22 gigawatt storage. This will necessitate significant grid expansion. And as per PTR analysis, this will translate to a massive 8,000 MVAs transmission network upgrade by 2026. So in the next 3 years, Spain is going to add 8,000 MVAs just because of this renewable energy penetration. So you can assume how these renewables are basically fueling the demand for power transformers in the region and are resulting in basically the market growth. So for the if you
Mhm.
talk about the Spanish market, then the power transformer market is expected to grow with a growth rate of average CAGR of 10% by 2030. So you see, it's a
Mhm.
huge growth because of the renewables, I would say.
Perfect. Very interesting. I think what I like about that is that, generally people talk about, oh, renewables is going to be more transformers, of course, but I think it's very important to get into the nuances of as well, right? That utility scale solar, for example, is almost growing by 100% compared to what happened in the last 5 years, right? Offshore wind is slowing down a little bit because of the project delays and the overall investment required. Onshore wind might be the sector to focus on within wind, at least for now, right? In terms of the growth, if you're looking at a high growth market. And then within Europe as well, right? Europe is huge. Like people just combine it overall, but you have to think about which countries to go after, like in terms of the demand or how the network expansion plans are going. Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that insight. Let's talk about the other aspect of the demand, which is EV chargers. Can you kind of get into similar details on how exactly is EV chargers growth driving the power transformers market?
Okay. So if you talk about the second major step towards decarbonization, that is basically electrification of the transport sector. Now we see like there is a huge push towards the adoption of electric vehicles to achieve the climate and net zero carbon goals in different European countries. And the EU's ambitious target of reaching 30 million electric vehicles by 2030 also aligns with the broader strategy of phasing out fossil fuel power cars by 2035. Now, this commitment of the European countries, coupled with the push for zero emission vehicles, is expected to significantly accelerate the demand for electric cars. So, if you look at the electric vehicle market in the European region, then it is expected to grow at a average growth rate of 21% from 2023 till 2030. Now, this massive growth needs to be met with the investment in the charging infrastructure to support the growing electric vehicle base. So in
Mhm.
order to do that, as per EU's Green Deal, EU has taken significant steps to enhance EV charging infrastructure, such as commitment to install charging stations every 60 kilometer along the EU's main highways by 2026. And this is and also like EU Green Deal has issued directives for new buildings to install these chargers as well. Now, what I would like to highlight that EU has issued this directive to install one charger per every 60 kilometer by 2026. But by 2030, they will double this number. So you will have then two charging stations per 60 kilometer between 2026 and 2030. So you see how this market is growing in the European region. Now, if we talk about the some of the rural areas of European countries, so mostly these EV chargers, they're not that much big in capacity, so they get connected with medium voltage network of the grid, 20 kV or 25 kV level. But in our research indicates like in some rural parts of the European countries, what's happening over there is the distribution grid available over there is not, you can say, reliable enough or modern enough to support this EV charging infrastructure. So over there, they are directly connecting the EV chargers or EV charging infrastructure with the sub-transmission grid. So I have come across case studies where EV chargers have been connected with 65 kV network, 72 kV network in the European countries. So there's one thing like EV chargers are definitely for sure indirectly driving the demand for power transformers, by resulting in grid expansion and capacity additions. But they are also in directly driving the demand for small to medium power transformers in rural areas of many European countries as well, because like I
Mhm.
said, the distribution grid over there is not strong enough or reliable enough to handle these fast EV chargers, I would say. So this is another important aspect of this EV charging penetration, I would say.
Very interesting, Azhar. Thank you so much for the insights. Viewers, this is it for this very quick episode of PTR Perspective. If you have any questions, any further questions on the power transformers market in Europe or EV chargers growth, both topics our teams cover in enormous detail, feel free to reach out to us directly via website or to me directly on my email address at hassan@ptr.inc. Thank you, Azhar, for the insights, and thank you everyone for viewing the episode. Take care, and we'll see you on the next one.
Take care.